All right. Most organizations that have embraced a digital-first stance have implemented some form of DevOps with their teams to achieve their business outcomes. Over the last few years, DevOps has revolutionized the way that we develop and deploy customer-centric features that benefit the users and the consumers. And they are able to get so much value out of the things that we deliver. If we really take a step back and evaluate all the various areas that DevOps has transformed, I can bucket it into 4 areas. The first one is from an execution perspective. It has changed the way that we design, that we develop, we deploy things in smaller, more frequent chunks using secure software supply chains, using vulnerability scanning, build images, dependency checks, infrastructure as code, you name it. We have actually transformed the way that we execute and we deploy things into production. The next one is collaboration. And from a collaboration standpoint, we brought in things like GitOps, having a common backlog, TDD, combined design efforts, brainstorming, customer empathy maps, and UX collaborations. And so it has changed that aspect of collaboration. Communication has really improved because we now have visibility on the build process, on the test process, on the deployment process. Everyone can have a good view through the pipelines. We have assessment based on the failures that have occurred, the deployments that happened. We know a lot of things that are occurring, and it's happening in many cases in an automated fashion. For example, as soon as something is deployed in production, it is not uncommon anymore for the system to actually post a message in Slack or Teams to notify the parties that are interested in the specific channels that the deployment went well or it failed, and here's the fail log. So it's really powerful, and it's changed the way that we've improved communication more onto the asynchronous way. And then it has improved enablement. Shared learning has increased. That's one of the most core tenets of DevOps. We are able to share our learnings, our validated learnings, our failures. It's empowered people and it's empowered teams into making the necessary decisions to be successful. But in addition to these 4, one of the best ways in which DevOps has transformed the way we work is through empathy. DevOps is rooted in empathy, if you really take a look at it. From a customer-centric perspective, DevOps is driving more deployments in a faster way to deliver the features that customers really, really want and that they can consume to reduce the pain that they are currently facing. But it's not just from a customer perspective. DevOps also improves things from a workforce perspective. It is driving systems to handle mundane, repetitive tasks and allow humans to look at the other things that are much more complex. And so I call these as the high-value activities. What DevOps is actually doing is enabling us as developers, as engineers, and as leaders to help our workforce focus on their high-value activities and then have the systems focus on the mundane tasks or the low-value activities. So for example, for developers, a high-value activity could be domain-driven design, architecture, maybe feature development, having designs better UX and brainstorming, and so on. And from an operator's perspective, it could be ensuring that the secure scanning in an automated way, having software patching, ensuring the stability and the scalability of the platform, rather than just looking at tickets and trying to figure out how things work. And so everything below that value line has now been supplemented by some form of automation or a systemic approach. And all of this is due to the fact that we are pushing so much towards DevOps. Automation has been very beneficial for systems to elevate where people and humans focus on. And this is a wonderful time to be in software development. I'm Gautham Pallapa, and I've been working with enterprises in various industry verticals for over 20 years. I'm the founder of Transformity, a thought leadership forum that helps organizations transform with empathy and technology. I'm also an executive advisor at VMware, where I partner with C-suite and executives and help them on their transformation journey. In my line of work, I've observed that while some organizations are excellent at enabling and championing DevOps in pockets, they tend to have a challenge to scale it to the entire organization, be it to a single business unit or to the entire organization overall. In this session, we will explore some of the reasons why we have those challenges, what is preventing us from actually scaling. And then I'll provide steps and a rigorous format that you can follow to help you scale from that single team approach and transform your organization or your business unit with DevOps and lean and agility. The techniques that I'm teaching over here are aggregated from work with over 25 enterprises in various industry verticals that have the workforce size ranging from 8,500 to 150,000 employees. So we're talking really massive enterprises. And hopefully what you learn in this particular session can be used and you can implement it, and there will be a lot of value that you can get out of it as you implement these various techniques. So let's start with the fundamental concept of what a really good DevOps team looks like what constitutes a stable team that can embrace DevOps and become that exemplar for the organization. It all begins with shifting from a project to a product mindset, as my good friend Mick Kirsten has written in his amazing book, Project to Product. Naturally, if we're moving into a more product mindset, the anchor role, or the first role, if you will, is going to be the product manager. A really powerful product manager is essential to bring that product mindset and help them think. Now, to help the product manager, you have an architect who will help build the modern software best practices, the standard CI/CD, TDD, security, and all different kinds of composable architecture to future-proof your product and make sure that the product doesn't have too much of refactoring or too much of technical debt incurred. Then, of course, you need application developers, and I include the testers and other dependencies include this. I'm calling it holistically as the devs, so to speak. And these are the people who will help build those modern applications and microservices, have those app accelerators and various pipelines that are needed to help create and build those beautiful features that customers want. Then you have the platform engineers or the infrastructure engineers who will provide that platform for these applications to run on. I include SRE in this because we want to bring in the concept of platform as a product rather than having siloed approaches of infrastructure engineers or platform engineers and then developers and IT operators and so on. So we want to make it more holistic. Then you have a DevOps specialist who, in my mind, is the technical equivalent of the architect for DevOps. So this person brings the DevOps methodologies, the DevOps philosophy, the frameworks, provides guidance around how SRE tooling needs to happen, automation, pipeline, CI/CD, and is part of the DevOps community of practices. Now, all of this is required for the stable team, but in an enterprise, it probably is not enough. These are the necessary roles, but not the sufficient roles. What you need is one more role, which in many places is unfortunately glazed upon, which is identifying the right platform champion. Who is the owner of this platform? Who is accountable for having the will and the political capital to protect this particular platform team or a stable team? This person is going to help remove the impediments, share the values, socialize, and provide and protect all the hard work that the teams are performing. And while this is the construct for a DevOps team, in reality, we are going to have Lean, Agile, and DevOps, which are going to be the three transformation drivers within an enterprise. You're going to bring in that Lean experimentation. It is impossible to have DevOps without the Lean experimentation approach. You need to have those feedback loops. Then you want to have Agile software development because you want to bring in pair programming and TDD and cloud native approaches. And then finally, you want to have a solid operational efficiency, and automation in place. So these three harmoniously locked together is going to create that exemplar team once you have that stable team identified. So as I mentioned before, this works well for a few exemplar teams, but what we have found time and again in different organizations is it breaks down when you try to scale. So I will provide 5 reasons, and I'm more curious from all of you to see if there are additional reasons, or if you plus one, or if you resonate with anyone more than the others. The first one is inertia. This is where the organization says, this is the status quo. We want it how it is. It's always been done this way. We don't want to change. This is very common within an enterprise. The next one is fear. It is fear of losing the job because of DevOps and automation and technology replacing humans. When in reality, what we're doing is, like I said, we're having humans focus on high value activity. We're upskilling humans. Then you have complacency, where organizations just don't want to change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, is the common thing that we see within enterprises. Low psychological safety is another one, which unfortunately does affect a lot of enterprises. People strive for perfection. I hear things like they want to have 100% uptime. Failure is not an option. There is no such thing. And this causes a lot of low trust. And if you don't have permission to fail, people are not going to take risks, and they're not going to try to innovate and automate and make change. But a really critical thing that I have observed within enterprises is that many of them don't actually know the difference between a change or a transformation. So in my mind, when I look at it, change is gradual. It's like leaves that change their color during the season. As you can see, it holds on to the past, and it only makes incremental changes to it. On the other hand, transformation is visceral. It questions the status quo, and it makes us take a step back to rethink and reimagine how we are generating value. It abandons the past, and it creates a radically new future. It requires a lot of courage, and it requires people questioning and trying to challenge the status quo. So here's a reflection for all of you. If you think about your DevOps transformation, or the way in which your organization has rolled out DevOps in the past, were you going through a change, or were you using DevOps to transform your organization? And that's something I'd like you all to reflect upon and think. So with all this context in mind, let's see how we can actually scale DevOps within an organization. So the first thing that I'd like to share is that over a broad gamut of things, there are 4 major outcomes for success in any kind of technology transformation. The first one is you want to have cross-functional stable teams, and we talked about that. You want to have reusable components, and you want to have composable architecture to reduce the amount of waste and technical debt that is coming in. You want to improve the speed to value, that is, you're improving the flow within the organization, and you want to reduce the technical sprawl, and you want to consolidate services or products, whatever it is. So these are the 4 major things that we see time and again in any kind of technology transformation or a digital transformation. You can pick and choose the word that you like, but these are the 4 important ones. Now, based on this, for an enterprise, there are actually 7 areas of focus for DevOps in this. We introduced DevOps because we want to accelerate time to market. And these are strategic outcomes. These are business outcomes that enterprises are driving towards, right? We want to accelerate the time to value. We want to deliver things as quickly as possible. Then we want to scale seamlessly and automatically. We don't want to have human intervention when we want to scale. Like there is an event that occurs and there is a peak event, and we want to make sure that the platform or the systems are resilient enough that they can scale up and scale down if the traffic dies up. Then we want to enable rapid change. We want to deploy things quicker in small bursts and make sure that we have the right developer experience, the right quality, we have security and compliance and so on. And while we're doing all this, we want to make sure that we have that positive culture, because if we don't have psychological safety, people are not going to take risks, there's not going to be trust, and people are not going to innovate. We want to measure and optimize because we really want to have that build, measure, learn approach, have those feedback loops. We want to measure things that matter and use that predictive analytics or the data-driven decision making in order to make things better. We always want to minimize the security vulnerabilities. That has always been a challenge. And we want to continue doing that with less manual overhead as possible. And then we want to empathize with people. We want to empower them. We want to equip them, and we want to engage them. So these are the 7 areas of focus for enterprise DevOps. If you zoom out a little bit, what we're really telling an enterprise to do is that we want the enterprise to innovate and we want it to operate. And this is the power of enterprise DevOps. And this is why we need to scale within an organization. So the first step to scale to an enterprise level is to have the right operating model. We want to make sure that people, processes, and technology are working together in a good governance model for the DevOps way of working. We then want to build that organization and have that positive culture and drive up that psychological safety, bring in experimentation, celebration of failure within the organization. We want to have standardized, interconnected processes across the value stream so that it is end-to-end and it will improve the flow of value within the organization. We want to have the right tools. At the end of the day, DevOps is a mindset, but what enables or accelerates it is technology. And so we need to have the right tool set, the technologies and services and products to provide that consistent and idempotent delivery of value. And then finally, we have to measure it. We need to obtain as much insight as possible from it and monitoring the relevant business and technical metrics. A lot of organizations focus only on the technical portion, but we need to look at the business portion as well. Because when we are building an operating model, what it always starts with is the vision, the why. Why does the organization exist? Why do we do the things that we do? Now, once we understand that, once we know what we want to achieve and what we are providing to the organization as to the industry as value, we then ask the question, what do we have to do? So what is our mission? What are the personas that are going to make this vision realistic? And what are the outcomes that we're striving for? And these outcomes are not just technical outcomes, they're actually business outcomes. And these business outcomes, when we achieve these business outcomes, is where we know that the vision has been realized. Then we go into the how. So the how requires us to build the right capabilities and skills within the organization. We need to make sure that the personas have the right skills, that our teams have the right capabilities. We have the right processes and flows. We have appropriate funding and charging. We charge back, show back, however you want to do it within an organization. We have the right functions and connectivity that will help us improve that flow within the organization, the right tools and platforms. And then we have the right measures and objectives and key results that will track to make sure that we're actually achieving the outcomes. So our definition of success is going to come from the OKRs. After that, we want to have the where. Like, where are we implementing all of these things? We're going to look at our sourcing systems and our ecosystems, be it a dev ecosystem, be it our HR ecosystem, be it our functional ecosystem, wherever it is, we're going to start looking at it. We're going to improve the collaboration and communication within an organization. We're going to change the culture. We're going to change the work style. And we're going to make it organizationally okay for people to fail and fail fast and fail often and fail cheap and embrace it and celebrate it so that validated learning of one team is really celebrated by the entire organization. And then we will focus on the organizational structure. We will bring in the roles and responsibilities to make it really solid. We identify the change agents who are actually going to drive it. And these change agents will be seeded into those exemplar teams that are going to drive DevOps. We're going to have governance and mandates, and then we're going to have incentives and rewards. We're going to celebrate all of these things And it has to be a conscious effort. So all of these things put together are the DevOps targeting model. A lot of it is based on the Deloitte State of DevOps model that was proposed a couple of years back, but I've made tweaks on it based upon my experiences and insights and failures that I've had within the organizations. Once we have this target operating model, we then roll out a way to actually implement it and to scale it. So as I mentioned, when we're building the stable teams, the first thing that we want to do is we want to look at things as platform as a product. Everything has to be a product. And that's why if you look at how the stable team was designed, every one of them has a product component in them. It overlaps with the product manager. So you're going to create that small team that looks at platform as a product. And then you're going to educate them and enable them. You're going to bring the technology transformation, and you're going to measure all the things that matter to us to answer the question, are we successful at achieving the outcomes that we set out to achieve? And the way we roll it is not in a big bang approach, and it's not in training the entire organization on DevOps or DevOps philosophy, but it's actually to just start small. You first create your outcomes roadmap, where you define a software factory approach on how you're going to bring people over. You create an MVP or your exemplar teams. And this is where the change agents really become beneficial. You bring them in and you empower, enable, and engage them and equip them with the right tools so that they can achieve their OKRs. You also consciously look at day two operations, have a day two workshop where the platform team know, and they have automated the various things that could potentially occur. And this is where having that DevOps specialist and the SRE, it becomes really, really beneficial. Then you get some success out of it, you learn from it, you tweak it, you bring on a couple of more teams and get them onboarded. And this is usually within a single department, or it could be within a business unit, but you focus on those. Ideally, I recommend not starting with an app team or a team that has extremely high business critical apps. But if the organization wants to embrace that risk and realize that they have to radically transform, I would say let's go with it, because everything gets better when you have skin in the game. Then you engage and educate people. You enable them. You have to have a consistent way to train and teach all these people that are on these application transformation projects. And this is where the community of practices for DevOps becomes really, really powerful, where you are building that knowledge and it's not single thread, and it's not incumbent upon the exemplar teams to showcase and answer questions or be consultative within the organization. It expands. And then you bring in more teams, more of the product teams, more of the service teams. You transition from a project to a product, and you start going from a function-based approach or from a service-centric approach or a product approach, and you start building all this. And then finally, and this is very critical, we want to make sure that we measure, and measurement starts from day one. And we want to make sure that we are tracking towards the outcomes that we have identified. And if you follow this kind of a roadmap and this blueprint, it is very easy for customers to scale quickly with DevOps. Now, I've talked of measurements a lot, but the tendency within an organization is stick to some very specific technical metrics, or maybe some productivity metrics or utilization metrics, because they're so used to think of it that way. Or it could be like percentage spend in the cloud, or it could be some business KPIs like ARR or product, very product-centric metrics. But in reality, when I talk about measures that matter, there is a whole gamut of things. There are 8 focus areas that I really like you to focus on when you are trying to drive adoption of DevOps and scaling it within the organization. The first one, we always want to have win stories. So you need to have customer-centric metrics, right? The next one is people metrics. We want to measure the happiness, productivity, burnout. We want to make sure that people are having a sustainable pace. From a process perspective, we want to look at the flow of value, how to reduce the waste, the manual toil, increase the automation footprint. And then from a culture perspective, the psychological safety, whether it's a positive culture, your happiness index, your empathy levels within the organization, celebrating the failure, so to speak. There are so many ways that you can do. Technology, you have so many metrics to choose from. You have product-centric metrics, you have DORA metrics, you have what we call as the 5Ss metrics. There are many ways by which we can do it. I mean, like, this is very well researched upon, and this is where people gravitate towards. But you also want to have product metrics, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the product is valuable and it's improving customer experience. You want to have marketing metrics. You want to see market penetration. You want to see adoption rate. You want to see how many people are actually happy looking at the marketing, and how many people are actually getting value out of the platforms and the products using DevOps. And then finally, you have financial. We are enterprises, and so we have to look at profitability, ROI, the spend versus plan, the total cost of ownership, and all those various things. So these holistic 360-degree view is what is essential when we are tracking the measures that matter as we are scaling DevOps within our organization. And it is not just picking and choosing one of them. We need to have good visual indicators that drive this message and showcase the true value within the organization about all the hard work that the teams have been doing as they are transforming, not changing, but transforming the way that they work in order to generate the value quicker, faster, cheaper. So let's put it all together. Firstly, there are 5 areas that we need to focus on as we are scaling DevOps within the organization. We want to have a solid operating model that is documented. We want to ensure that we are focusing on having a positive culture and a really good generative organization within, and it has a lot of psychological safety. We have experimentation with celebrating failures and so on. Really good processes. We're improving the flow of value. We're modernizing the flow, so to speak. We want to have good technology. Technology, not for the sake of technology, but technology that actually helps reduce the technical debt. And when I say technology for the sake of technology, I don't mean resume-driven development, where you're taking the shiniest thing just because it's cool. We want to really look and see, what does this offset? What are we eliminating? How are we containing and managing for the technical debt that we could be incurring? And finally, we want to measure what matters. And then how do we scale? We first plan, we understand the current state, we align with where we want to go and create that roadmap. We then implement some things, have some exemplars, and inspire people through the stories and the values that they're doing. We engage more of the people and bring them in and teach them about the new ways of working. We help them adopt, where we iterate on the principles and practices. We have the DevOps community of practices to help this. Then we fortify, we establish leaders, the change agents, we have structures, we have platform owners or the platform champions to help sustain these new principles and practices. And then we expand, we roll it out to more people. We bring in that lean governance, having common outcomes. We know what we're trying to accomplish, what the definition of success is. And finally, we're going to maintain the focus, optimize, and continue learning at scale. And if we have done this for one business unit, we're going to rinse and repeat. We're going to replicate it. We're going to seed it for the next organization with experienced practitioners. So with this, I'd like to leave you with another reflection. Think about what you're currently going through. And based upon all the learnings and the framework that are presented today, what steps can you take to scale DevOps within your enterprise? How can you change it? What new things will you introduce? What are you going to champion? How are you going to become that change agent? And then start sharing it. I would love to hear from all of you. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope this can scale within your organization, and I would love to hear your stories. Thank you.